go. Save on the electricity. There's a fair bit in the news, isn't there? There's a fair bit in the news, and the gospel contains a thing called Bible prophecy. We'll have a little look at that. I might just mention, you know, when Sandra always gives a testimony, and she said there's something really bad. There was a rumour going around. You know, she's saying she thought something really bad had happened to me. Do you want to know what it was? My kids, close your ears, Joe. There was a rumour going around that I'd become an Evertonian. That's what it was. That was the bad thing. She never mentions any of the good bits. I wore a suit to her wedding and brought shamrocks. She never mentioned that, do you? Anyway. I was listening to the leadership camp thing. If you're on the WhatsApp, you'll see that you got the link. I don't think you can get it if you just go to YouTube. You've got to get it through the WhatsApp. Thanks, Lil. I was listening to Pastor Sasha, and he's very, very passionately putting forward, you know, how important Bible prophecy is. And it is very, very important. And we're kind of unique. We're a spirit-filled church who really understand Bible prophecy from Genesis going through to Revelation. And if you don't understand what's what in the Old Testament, good luck in the New, particularly in the book of Revelation. So Bible prophecy, we're going to talk about the nations a little bit today and what's happening on the world scene. So Bible prophecy talks about what's going to happen with the nations. There's also Bible prophecy, which is messianic. Jesus is the Son of God. He's the Christ. He's the Messiah. And he was prophesied in the Old Testament. And there was all these different things had to happen for him to fulfill every single prophecy in the Old Testament. You couldn't make it up if you tried. If you tried to fulfill the Old Testament, you wouldn't be able to do it. So there's, it's the Old Testament prophesies of Jesus, the Messiah, to come. He came 2,000 years ago. There's another thing. We have the gift of prophecy, don't we, in the meeting? We were talking about this the other week in the spiritual gifts. And that can be as simple as, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. The Bible will tell you, if you sow to the flesh, you will reap corruption. That's prophecy. That's also Bible prophecy, but it's really spiritual instruction to the individual. So Bible prophecy covers, you know, a great deal of things. The thing we're looking at today is the nations. Yes, please, Reuben. We have a more sure word of prophecy. You do well to take heed as a light that shines in a dark place till the day dawn and the day start rising your hearts. Peter went up the mountain with Jesus, and Jesus was transfigured before him, Peter, James and John, and he didn't know what to say. He said, we should bring three tabernacles. And a voice comes from heaven saying, this is my beloved son. Listen to him, you know, kind of thing. And what he's saying when he writes the letter, I was up the mountain with Jesus. I saw this transfiguration. But the word of God and the word of prophecy is even more sure than the thing that I saw with my eyes. That's what he's talking about. Read it for yourself in 2 Peter chapter 1. And that's what it's like. That's what we're like. When you're spirit-filled, that's what you're supposed to look like. You're supposed to be shining it out, mate. Shining out the gospel, shining out the truth through your testimony and saying the things that Jesus said. That's what we're called to be in a troubled world, that you can pull people out of the sea. It's a good job, isn't it? It's a good job. Next one, please. Well, we're going to have, so if we were to look at the things that were prophesied in the Old Testament, there's been great empires. Get your history books out. The fall of Babylon is prophesied in great detail. Cyrus is my shepherd. 2 leave gates are going to, so on and so forth. We do this as a presentation. The fall of Nineveh was also prophesied. The fall of the Assyrian Empire. The fall of Tyre and Sidon. In waves. Alexander the Great and all this kind of thing. So the Bible has got a good track record of predicting the future of what's going to happen to the empires upon the face of this earth. Are very, very accurate. And if we were to care to go back, we would understand that the Bible is ultra accurate. It's not obscure like Nostradamus. This could fit this. It's ultra accurate. So it's got a good track record, the Bible, in predicting the future, obviously before it happens. Next one. Yeah, I mean, there's much more than that, but we were saying at the beginning, wasn't it? The things that were fulfilled just at the crucifixion, the 3 days leading up to the crucifixion, the Passover, the betrayal, Jesus selling them, smitten, spat upon. You can see it all for yourself. But again, all of these things are written in the Old Testament, and Jesus fulfills every single one of them at his death and resurrection. And there would be more than that, but we're just talking about that little period of time. So that's a good little thing. If you've got one of those, you can find one of those, you can go through them, and it really increases your faith. What the Bible says is going to happen, and it happens in great detail. Next one, please. John's been taking us through the book of Daniel and the various empires, and he tells us he's in Babylon when he receives a vision from God, and he says to the king of Babylon, which was the greatest empire in the world at that particular time, you are the head of the gold, and after you is going to come the Medes and the Persian Empire, and after them is going to come the Greek Empire, and after them is going to come the Roman Empire. Yeah, and that's exactly the way it goes through history, And when we get to the bottom, the Roman Empire, we're still waiting. That empire, the last part, the fourth beast that he wonders at, is somewhere in existence in some form today upon the earth, that fourth beast, because until the stone that's cut without hands comes and smites the images on its feet, and it becomes like the chaff of the summer threshing floors, the Lord says. So he's talking about Jesus, the rock, coming at his second appearance to bring all these kingdoms that have reigned upon the earth down once and for all, and to set up the 1,000 years rule and reign upon the earth, Jesus Christ, before he offers it up to the Father. So it's a very, very clear image we've got. Jamie does a few things on the book of Revelation. There's a very clear message in the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation is the unfolding of history of the Roman Empire. It's the whole book of Revelation, from its beginning to the end, is foretelling from 2,000 years ago the Roman Empire, the fourth beast. And the Roman Empire, we know, changed into imperial to Holy Roman Empire. And then we've got the Catholic system, which becomes the beast, which all ties in. So if you don't understand that, forget reading Revelation. Forget. And people come up with these weird and wonderful things, some of them very popular. They're just completely untrue when you stick them next to the scriptures. A beast is a kingdom upon the earth, and the fourth beast was the Roman Empire, and the Roman Empire in some form is in existence upon the face of the earth today, because Jesus hasn't come, and we can go through that as well. Next one. Jesus, he sat upon the Mount of Olives, and the disciples came to him privately saying, when will these things be? What will be the sign of coming and the end of the world? He just told them that this temple that they're looking at is going to be destroyed. We're not going to look at that today. So they ask him an important little thing in Matthew 24. We should all be reading Matthew 24 on a regular basis. But they ask him 3 questions, and he gives 3 answers. And one of the questions they ask him, when is the destruction of the temple? And he's answering that question in that answer. And it's to do with AD 70, the Romans coming down, the Emperor Vespasian, Titus's general, comes down, and they sack Jerusalem. It's an incredible event, really, in world history. So he's answering that question. When will these things, what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the world? So we're going to look at this end of the world business today. That kind of gets bandied about a little bit. Next one, please. You'll hear of wars and rumours of wars. See ye, be not troubled. All these things must come to pass. The end is not yet. Nation against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. Famines, pestilence, earthquakes in diverse places. These are the beginning of sorrows. When Jesus talks about, when they ask him about the end of the world, when are you going to come? He always uses the same terminology, which is birth pangs. The beginning of sorrows means when a woman who's been pregnant for a long time, the baby's starting to come out, suddenly there's a contraction. All of a sudden, what's going on? What's going on? And then there's peace. And then there's another contraction. And the periods of time in between these times of trouble get shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter until the baby comes out. Yeah, so Jesus uses that terminology when he's answering these questions, and this terminology carries on into the New Testament letters as well. Next one. So wars, rumours of wars, and where are we at the moment in the world situation? Yes, please, let's have the first one up. Mr. Putin, whoever tries to hinder us, threaten our country or our people, should know that Russia's response will be immediate and will lead you to consequences that you've never faced in your history. That's the Prime Minister, that's the President of the Russian Federation, Mr. Vladimir Putin. He's of great power and he has great authority in his part of the world, and that's what he says. Now, we've seen wars before, we've seen world wars before, so what would be these consequences that you've never faced in your history? And the only consequence that we've never really faced in our history is nuclear war. That's what we're talking about. That's what the world, unfortunately, that's what the world looks like in these times. On the other side of things, Mr. Biden over here, he's still the President of America. A direct confrontation between NATO and Russia is World War III. So we're not scaremongering here, we're not bigging anything up. But World War III, we can see through history, in the end, it comes to war. It comes to war. It's the great settler, I suppose. Something we must strive to prevent, he tweeted on Friday night. So these quotes are a couple of years old now, when people were getting nervous about Russia, first of all, going down into Ukraine. So wars, rumours of wars, kingdom against kingdoms, nation against ethnos against ethnos, it talks about. Next one, please. And particularly now, this week, so things are moving forward, and alliances are being formed. If you think about before the beginning of the First World War, for 20, 30 years before, there was a lot of to and fro and here and there and sides taking, political maroon, economic unrest and this kind of thing. And even beginning, that it's the Archduke Ferdinand, isn't it? He gets bumped off. It seemed like a very small incident, and then it's game on. But before Adolf Hitler came to power, he was there for 6, 7, 8, 9 years. There were things going on. There was unrest around. You know, there were difficulties, particularly if they lived around that neck of the woods. There was concerns. And then it comes in, he oversteps the mark. He gambled going into Poland. So these things don't just happen overnight. And we're in a period of time in world history where there's an awful lot of things going on the world scene. The Bible describes this kind of thing. And on the other side of things, are we on the brink? Now, these are things, you put it in the internet, and your major news outlets are using this language. That's not us using this language. Are we on the brink? And particularly Russia, North Korea, Iran and China, that's super duper power there you've got there, really. It's an awful lot of people, quite a lot of firepower. Next one. We're just one step away from World War III. Putin warns NATO. And he's quite clear in his language, what he intends and what he intends to do. You leave me alone and don't interfere in my business or else. You know, that's the way it is. You know, and it's interesting the way these are world leaders. There's no diplomacy in their language, really. They're quite straightforward. Next one, please. That's what it would look like, you know, North Korea, China, Iran and Russia. Now, these players, China's quite quiet, really, but there's big concerns about it. But Russia's not quiet. Iran's not quiet. North Korea's not quiet. And it's a dangerous alliance. And we can see there's a bit of a power shift going on. Next one. There you go, just the flags of those. Next one, please. This is, I think this is late last year. China, Iran and Russia joint naval drills in the Gulf of Oman. That's where they're blowing the ships up. You know, and that's why, you know, the goods are starting to get more expensive. You'll see they're either robbing the hijacked one, Iran hijacked one, last week, and the Houthis have been firing missiles, cruise missiles, at ocean liners going through there. That's where nearly half of the world's trade's going through there. Yeah, and so these three powers, China, Iran and Russia, are joining up in their armies and in their navies, and they're practicing for something. You know, that's the next one. This is a common thing that you see. Why you might wonder and ask yourself, particularly with Iran, why is it that when Israel does something, they say death to America? You ever wondered that? That's what they say. They're having a barney with Israel, and this historic, you know, like kind of hostility between these two nations. And whenever that happens, they start bearing the American flag. So they put together over there that Israel and America are joined up together. In a way, prophetically, they are. These are the people of the covenant. These are the people of the covenant. Yeah, anyway, next one. Saying death to America is easy. We need to express death to America with action. Now, that's the leader, supreme leader of Iran. And that's the language that they use publicly. So what they use privately, who knows? Hassan Rouhani, president of Iran. So the clear message that's coming out of that side of the world at this particular time is clearly very, very, very hostile to nations over this way. Yeah, next one. There's a power shift going on in the world. There's a power shift going on. Britain, America, the Commonwealth of Nations, Europe have really had it their way for a long time. We could call them, the kind of Abrahamic covenant nations. And we can see that economically now, particularly, we think about the oil and the gas and the coal and, the manufacturing. It's all starting to be on this side of the world. And there is definitely an economic, there's a lot of wealth over that side of the world. And wealth buys power. And what these nations will do, if they want to kind of undermine these nations, they'll come over here and they'll buy land, they'll buy people, they'll buy politicians, and this kind of thing to exert influence, not just here, in other places as well. And this has been going on for a long, long time. But there is a massive shift on the world scale. There really is. And all the what you call it, all the economic people report on this. Yeah, next one. So remember Jesus said you'll hear wars, rumours of wars, there'll be famines, earthquakes. Now, we could look at the earthquakes and the frequency of earthquakes, which is notable, that they are increasing, But there's another thing about earthquakes in the Bible. It's to do with symbolic terms, major shifts of power on the world scene. And the book of Revelation tells you about that. Remember, the book of Revelation is going to foretell what's going to happen, particularly in the Roman side of things, which particularly was Europe. People just want to take over and dominate Europe. So great earthquake, Constantine, the French Revolution, the fall of Babylon. Great, so it means there's political instability. There's a great big change upon planet Earth, and it's coming with trembling. Think about an earthquake. So there's a symbolic use to the language, and that there is an earthquake happening geopolitically, if you like, in the times that we live in. It's quite clear. There's a power shift, a power struggle on the world scene, a large one. Yeah, next one. So particularly with Russia, there's some chapters in Ezekiel chapter 38 particularly, and they're called by some the Russian chapters of Ezekiel, and they identify that this force. Now, Ezekiel is in Babylon. He's a prophet. He's God's prophet. He's by the river. He's in Babylon, and he prophesies. And the Lord shows him something. Some people will claim, he's talking about the thing that's going to next happen to Israel back in 500 BC. Well, he's not really, because he sets him as a watchman, and he talks about the regathering of their captivity in the chapters before, 36 and 37, 37 and 38, and he talks about this force called Gog and Magog, this major force and this major power coming against the land of Israel. The final battles really he's talking about, if you care to read it. So these are good chapters to read. You're not going to understand everything that's in there, but some things, hopefully if we identify a couple of things today, you'll go home, you pick up Ezekiel 38 and you think, I recognise this, I recognise this. Next one. So a couple of the verses. Set your face against Gog and the land of Magog, the chief prince of Rosh, of Meshech, Tubal, and prophesy against him. And some would say that Rosh, if you were to take that through, vocabulary-wise, would come up as Russia, and Meshech maybe Moscow. Persia, Ethiopia, Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet, Gomer and all his bands, the house at Sogamar, of the north quarters, all his bands, all many people, you'll come from your place out of the north parts. So he's talking about a great force, a great alliance of nations and armies getting together, coming down against Israel. So if we go north from Israel, what do we see? So by the way, you can't really place on a map, because things change on maps. I hope you know that. Countries and borders, and it used to be this border, and now it's that. It used to be called by a different name, so on and so forth. But what we can say, there's a great force coming down from the north, headed up by Meshach. A good way to remember Gog and Magog, I remember Steve Gillespie saying once, this is where we get our words gigabyte and megabyte. Gigabyte and megabyte. When we're talking in computer language, all that information, all that data. How many gigabytes have I got? Can't remember. I got a new phone. I have to get so many gigabytes. But this is what it's talking about. It's a prophecy against these nations that are going to come down in the last times against the nation of Israel. Now, bear in mind that Israel has only been a nation again since 1948, by the way. Bear that in mind, because it wasn't allowed to be a nation for many, many years. Next one. Yeah, just the symbology of Gog and Magog. People make a lot of this stuff out of it. That's in Australia, Gog and Magog, the two giants there. But it's to do with these two giants, yeah? And Gog and Magog, sons of Japheth, the Scythians of the peoples of the Black Sea. Josephus, he was around 2,000 years ago, when they said, who's Gog and Magog? He said, it's those northern Caucasus people up there, yeah, around the Black Sea, the Scythians and the Black Sea, which we're going to see in a minute. Next one. Genesis 10, these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham and Japheth, and unto them were the sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshach. So see these nations in verse 2. A lot of these nations, a lot of these names, you will see them when you read Ezekiel 38, and they're popping up again. They're popping up again. So when we go to the world that then was, back in Genesis, we can see that they're the Japhethic nations in the red up at the top. They're the people in the northern parts, and they were really joined up back in the day. They're kind of one tribe. They're from Japheth. They're the Japhethic people. And you've got the Shemitic people down here, which will include the Arabs and the Jews and so on and so forth. And then you've got Ham over here in northern Africa and down that East African coast. Yes, please. I think this is from 1880. So the Hebrew map, this is where the Hebrews said these people would have been a long time ago. You can see, again, same words, Gomer, Togarmah, Magog, Meshach, Tubal, 1874. So when we go back and we look at the world that then was and how the nations were spread out then, we get a general pattern that these people were above where the lands of Russia, Ukraine, the Uzbekistans and all that are sitting today. Yeah, next one, please. And this is an artisan, but it might not be completely accurate, but if we were trying to put these nations of Ezekiel 38 and put them somewhere on the map today, this is generally where they would live in these times. Yeah, coming against, it says, remember, they're going to come down, there's going to be a confederate against the land of Israel. Yeah, next one. In verse 8, he says, after many days you'll be visited. In the latter years you shall come into the land that is brought back from the sword. So God punished Israel, and they were kicked off for 7 times, 2,520 years. General Allenby retakes Jerusalem in 1917, and that's the punishment is finished. They become a nation again in 1948. And the land that was brought back from the sword, well, when before Israel and the Jews came back into the land of Israel, which wasn't Israel then, it was Palestine. The Ottoman Empire is the lands that brought back from the sword. So all their symbolism is the men of the sword, is the people of the sword. So it was brought back, that's why it's called brought back from the sword, from the Ottoman Islamic Turkish Empire. Next one, please. A lot of this stuff fits in with other prophecies that we might do. after many days you'll be visited, the latter years land prophecy, is gathered out of many people against the mountains of Israel, which have been always waste, but is brought out of the nations, that they may dwell safely, all of them. So 1917, after the First World War, Jews in Europe started to move back to the land which is now called Israel since 1948. They started to come back. They were from all over the world. The Jews had been spread out. You weren't allowed to be a Jew in Jerusalem. For thousands of years, you weren't allowed to be a Jew in Jerusalem. Yeah. So we can see that all of these people from all these different lands, all these different languages, they had one common thing, that they were all Jews. They were all Jews. They come back into the land. 1917, they start to build, they start to take the land. There's trouble there. And the next thing, they get a state of Israel, 1948. And we've got trouble ever since in that land. But Israel, in that sense, has only been there since 1948. Next one. Here you go. This was the thing at the time. They'll fall by the edge of the sword. They'll be led away captive into all nations. Jerusalem be trodden down till the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. This is Jesus, by the way. This is Old Testament stuff. And he's talking about the time of the Gentiles being fulfilled. And that the Gentile nations was fulfilled after 1917 to 1948. That's when Israel started coming back to be a nation. We could go into that today. Another thing he says in Luke chapter 21, he spoke a parable, behold the fig tree. And he's still talking about the signs of the times of Jesus' return. He says, the fig tree and all the trees. The fig tree and all the trees. Now, Israel is sometimes likened in the Old Testament to a fig tree. We've got the naughty figs, the very naughty figs, and the good figs, the very good figs, and this kind of thing. When they now shoot forth, and you see and you know of your own selves that summer is now nigh at hand, so likewise when you see these things come to pass, know you that the kingdom of God, Jesus is coming. The return of Jesus Christ to the earth for the second time is near at hand. And he says the fig tree and all the trees. So Israel becomes a nation again in 1948. That's quite recent history. But if you look at all these other nations, Morocco, 1956, Algeria, wherever it is, I can't even see them, Libya, 51, 1922 for Egypt, What it's saying is all these nations became nations again because they were ruled over by kingdoms, by empires, and then they all started to have their own borders again. They all started to put their own flag up again, have their own rule again, have their own leadership again. So the fig tree and all the trees are starting to display. And if we look at that, since the turn of the 20th century, all the trees are starting to pop up. So the fig tree and all the trees, he said, when you see this happening, you know that summer's coming. It's near. It's near. So what we would say is, you know, Jesus says, you can discern the face of the sky. How is it that you can't discern the signs of the times? You want to turn the heating off, please, Ron? Thanks. And nobody knows the day or the date, and you don't want to get too excited when X, Y, or Z happens in the news. But at the same time, we need to be on guard, because in God's great plan, in the grand scheme of things, it's at the doors. The time we live in, for sure, the return of Jesus is at the doors. And it should be part of our thinking and part of our gospel. Next one, please. Part of Jesus' gospel. It'll come to pass. The things will come into your mind and you'll think an evil thought. This is Gog and Magog, this great northern confederacy going down to Israel. And you say, I will go up. Hang on, I thought you were going down. They were coming down, weren't they, from the north to the land of Israel. And at the same time, when this begins to happen, I'll go up to the land of unwalled villages. I'll go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls, having bars or gates. To take a spoil, to take a prey, to turn your hands upon the desolate places now inhabited. People that are gathered out of the nations, which have gotten cattle and goods and dwell in the midst of the land. That's a different place to the people being brought back to the land taken by the sword. He's talking about, so he's not talking about the ones where you go down now. He's talking about the ones where what would happen if you went up from Russia or from those northern parts? Where would you end up? You would end up in Alaska, Canada, and the United States of America. Now, is that a description? The land of unwalled villages. America really is quite modern in its history. And it doesn't have castles and bars and gates and those types of defences that ancient Europe and the Middle East would have, does it? Dwelling without walls, gathered out of many nations, gotten cattle and goods. Does that sound a little bit like a modern take on America? Because it does to me. It does to me, you know. And if Gog and Magog think an evil thought and thinking, oh, while we're at it, we could just nip up over here. You know, it's very, very... You don't really realise how close the United States and Russia really are until you look on a map like that. It's just across the road. It's like going to Birkenhead. You know what I mean? It's the quickest way. It's the quickest way over. The Bible indicates that this great force that goes against Israel is going to have an evil thought at that moment, and it's going to cause them to go up to the land of unwalled villages. Maybe it means something else. Who knows? But it fits the bill. It fits the bill. And we would say that it's highly likely that that's going to turn out to be the United States of America being attacked by a great northern force when there's something, everyone's distracted down here, what's going on in the Middle East. Next one, please. Another thing that Jesus says, the lightning shines from the east to the west, so also shall the coming of the Son of Man be. People talk about the secret rapture. There is no secret rapture. Every eye will see Jesus at his return. You will be caught up to meet in the air, the Bible says so, but there's nothing secret about it, you know. Wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. Again, Jesus is talking about the same subject. He hasn't stopped. And we look at eagles, look at all these nations, you know, and they're all pretty much in the thick of it down there. That's on our news screens today, isn't it? The Americans are being dragged in. Libya's there. Persia, Iran is definitely there. Syria, Iraq, Egypt, Russia, Palestine, Jordan, United Arab Emirates. A lot of eagles. And Jesus has given an indication where you see all these eagles gathering together. That's where it's going to be happening for the end time. When is the end of the world and the sign of thy coming and the end of the world? Next one, please. So again, we're just going through our fourth empire. Please, Reuben. So remember we were talking about the Roman Empire. And it's interesting, isn't it? The Roman Empire's symbolism very much was to do with eagles. Yeah. And then when it goes down, because remember in Daniel's image, it's got two legs, hasn't it? And you've got the Eastern Roman Empire and the Western Roman Empire, and that will be called Byzantines or Constantinople. And, you know, he's got a two-headed eagle over there, which becomes the orthodoxy side of Catholicism and Catholic Europe, Russia and the Tsars and all this kind of thing on this side. It's always been to do with who's having power in Europe. That was the golden thing, wasn't it? Always trying to dominate. Rome did it. And then we think about Napoleon. He tried to conquer Europe and be the emperor of Europe, basically, didn't he? And what was his standards? It was the eagle. And it's as though they admired the Roman Empire and they tried to kind of reinvent it in their own terms. Adolf Hitler and the Nazis, so much Roman symbolism in their banners and in their uniforms and in their army. Is it just a coincidence? Why is that? Why is that? Wherever the eagles are gathered, so will the body be. So we can see the symbolism, excuse me, of eagles representing people who are particularly wanting to dominate in Europe. Next one, please. You've got Mr. Putin on the left, and he's standing in front of the symbol of the Russian Federation today. And they're putting it up there, the two-headed eagle, very, very ancient symbol, a Byzantine symbol, really. And he stands very, very proudly in front of it, sending you a message of who we are. Mr. Biden, the Americans are also sending you a message of who they are. They also have their eagle on their crest, don't they, in the Great Seal of the United States. And he's got olive berries in one hand, and he's got arrows in the other. You know what I mean? And he's saying, well, our faces towards the olive berries, we'd like peace. You know, trade brings peace. Trade, when nations are trading, people don't want to fight because they're making money. You know, so he's got his face is towards the olive berries, but he's got the arrows in the other hand. Try us and see. Try us and see. And America as a nation are very much like that. You know, you saw Pearl Harbor, and you saw what the fruit of Pearl Harbor was, that's called Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You know, terrible things, really. Next one. Where are the eagles gathered? It's all happening in the land of Israel. You know, now our hands kicking off and that kind of thing. But really, all eyes are on Jerusalem. All eyes are on the land. You can't get away from the land of Israel. People are terrified, and they're using these terms, World War III. Why? Because it's all happening in Israel. Why is Israel a hotspot? Because the Bible, people know what the Bible says, and they've known it for years, that you know, the end of time is going to happen in Jerusalem and in the land of Israel. Next one, please. Put that one up, please, yeah. In Zechariah, it says, I'll gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the Lord will go forth against those nations when he fought in the day of battle. Imagine that. Bob was talking about war in here the other week from the book of Revelation. Can you imagine the God of the Old Testament turning up on the world scene and going forward to fight? You know, well, I'll take his power over any weapon that they've got at the moment, because that's what he says is going to happen. Zechariah, he'll gather all nations against Jerusalem to do battle. Just to point out that every nation that surrounds the land of Israel today is Islamic. Islamic. And many of those nations have a common cause to wipe Israel off the face of the map. We're not, by the way, we're not politically. If you're an Arab or a Jew, we don't care who you are. You come in here, you've got to be born again. We're not pro or against anybody in here. Don't get this. We're not political in that sense. But it's saying they're going to be surrounded. All nations are going to be drawn in there, and there's going to be a battle in Jerusalem. That's going to be the last battle. Yeah, and it's quite clear on the map what's going on. Next one. Go on, Rubes. What would World War III mean? What would it mean? We've already seen the damage that a hydrogen bomb can do at the end of World War II. This will be the plague wherewith the Lord will smite the people that have fought against Jerusalem. Jerusalem, yeah. Their flesh will consume away while they stand upon their feet. Their eyes will consume away in their holes. And the tongue will consume away in the mouth. Now, he's writing this 3,000 years ago. What's he talking about? Who would have ever seen such a plague? What else is able to do this? If you read the book, there's a book called Hiroshima. It's easy enough to read. And it's 6 people who survived the nuclear bomb in Japan. And they give an account. One of the accounts is this guy. He survived the blast and the light and the flash and that kind of thing. And he finds these soldiers in the gardens who needed water. And he didn't have any eyes and he didn't have any tongues. And he had to get a leaf and make a funnel out of a leaf to pour the water into their gullet. Their eyes are consumed in their sockets and their tongues in their mouths while they were standing on their feet. That's the effect of the radiation. That kind of thing. Not a very nice thing to talk about, I agree. But the Bible prophesies, and you think, what else can it be? And then we get to these modern times, and the only description that fits it is from modern times. And this is the reality. You know, this is the reality. It's coming to planet Earth, whether we like it or not, because we're not in control of these situations. It only takes one wrong move, you know. So we would say it would be right for people to consider these words and these prophecies and fear and escape from what was coming upon the earth. More to that at the end. Next one, please. There's a lot of them around. Nuclear weapons now. I don't know how they know all this stuff, and there's probably a few more rogue ones knocking around. But we live in a very, very dangerous world. There's a lot of nuclear weapons about, and a lot of nations who you wouldn't really trust. If you shook hands with them and they promised they wouldn't do it, they might have their fingers crossed behind the back, kind of thing. You know. So there's just a little bit of information to say. There's a lot of this stuff about, and somewhere down the line, there's going to be a mistake is going to be made. It may just be a mistake that's made at the end of the day that sets it all off. Who knows? Next one. So, most Bible prophecy is accurately fulfilled. Ezekiel identifies a great Russian-led alliance to come against Israel. That's Ezekiel 38. Next one. Major concern. The conflict in Ukraine, will it overspill into other nations? Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? They're terrified of it, really, aren't they? We could be witnessing the fulfillment of this prophecy. We could be. I'm not saying that it is, and that it's all going to happen tomorrow. No one knows the day or the date, but we are aware of the season, and it's the season that we live in. Israel, Jerusalem, the final battle before the Lord's return, peace and safety. In an hour, you think, no. So you wake up and Israel's apparently bombed Iran, and Iran's bombed Israel, and you think, oh, is it going to be today? Well, probably not. In an hour that you think not, the Son of Man shall come. Next one, please. Yeah, that's right. You don't know, but it's right to be prepared. If you don't know, you need to be ready today. That's the way the Bible, the last 2,000 years, the Spirit-filled church has got to be ready. You should have been ready 2,000 years ago, and you should have been ready. When I first came along, I believed the Lord was going to come back like right now. And 30 years down the line, I believe the Lord's going to come back right now without contradiction. Without contradiction. And we need to be ready. We need to be aware of this. That. The other thing, just to point out, this is part of the gospel. This is part of Jesus' gospel, and it's a part of our gospel. We want people to know how to be born again. But they have to know what they're escaping. They have to know what they're fleeing from and fleeing to. So part of the gospel, it's faithful to warn people. Faith takes heed to the warnings that's in God's word. And faithful people will warn other people, there's something coming, and you need to move. Everyone knows the one about the girl. She was 14, and that tsunami came in Indonesia, and she's on the beach, and all the water rushed out. Apparently all the water rushes out, and there's a funny noise. And she stands up and she says, "We've all got to leave the beach now." And he went, "How do you know? You're only 14. She said, "We learned it in school last week." And some people listened to her. A lot of people didn't listen to her because she was only 14. How would she know? And they had her marked down. The tsunami came. And it took a lot of people. And the ones that listened to that little girl, the tsunami didn't take them. So it's faithful to heed God's warnings. Next one. This come in my ears, I don't know how many times in the last few weeks, from Christian people, Spirit-filled world, Christian people. Once you're saved, you're always saved. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. False doctrine. Yeah, false. You hear anybody saying it, we've got the parable of the 10 virgins, Spirit-filled people. 5 are foolish, 5 are wise. He didn't take oil, he didn't get in. Why'd you call me Lord, Lord, and do not the things that I say? I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of iniquity. You got the parable of the talents. Take it off him and give it to him who's got 5 talents. Give it to him who's got 10 talents. Those who do such things will not. We could go on and on and on. Galatians chapter 5. If you continue in the flesh, once you're Spirit-filled, and you continue doing those things despite the Spirit of grace, you will not inherit the kingdom of God. It couldn't be clearer all the way through the New Testament. Anybody who's teaching in Christianity that once you're born again, you're saved, that's it, you can't ever do any other wrong, that's a lie. That's an outright lie. And there's much doctrine about this stuff coming up now, in the sign of the last times, really. No chance, not in the Bible. Next one. What time is it? The Lord will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God. Too late then. In the moment, in a twinkle of an eye, it'll be over. You wouldn't know, So that's why you have to be ready today. Next one. Let's be glad, rejoice, give honour to him. The marriage of the Lamb. It's a day of rejoicing to be looking forward to, although there's destruction upon the earth for the Spirit-filled church. It's the young lady waiting for their wedding day, with their well-beloved coming back. Very, very much, something to be celebrated. Go on. 96, 97, 98, 99, 100. Coming ready or not. Coming ready or not. You used to play that game. You have to hide your eyes. Coming ready or not. It doesn't matter whether people believe that Jesus is coming. It doesn't matter whether people are ready or not. He's coming anyway. He's coming anyway. And, I had these two bricklayers, and they were leaving the job. They're going to another job, and they were giving me a bit of stick. And I said, well, what it is, boys, I said, I'll be on the ark going up with Jesus, and I'll be looking down on you like that, saying, see you, boys. You wouldn't listen, would you? And they were laughing at me. And they came back 2 weeks later to pick up their wages, their weekend wages. And he said to me, I've been dreaming about you on the boat and me being left down. Me being left down here. He said, I can't get it out of my head that you're going up and I'm staying down. I said, well, you are. I said, you're going to come to a meeting? He went, no. But sorry, that's the way it is. That's the way the Lord, he's given his son, he's proved his love. He doesn't want any to perish, but people will. Not many people responding to the gospel. Yeah. Next one. Yeah, we've got a choice in the matter. Jesus has paid, can't save yourself. But if you trust in what Jesus has done and his sacrifice, he's bought salvation for us. And what we've got to do is accept his terms. Yeah, I am a sinner. I can't get to heaven by being a good boy, even if I did very, very many good things. I've just got to trust what you've done at Calvary. Verily, verily, except a man be born again. He can't. Giving your life to the Lord, giving your heart to Jesus, saying the sinner's prayer, is not the same as what Jesus said, that you've got to be born of water and the Spirit to get in. And if you're trusting in such things, if you're being taught such things, you're trusting in a lie. You're trusting in a false gospel, because that's not what Jesus said. You must be born again. Next one. Except a man be born of water and the Spirit, he can't get in. Very, very simple. I don't know why it gets so complicated. It's so simple. Well, our children do understand it, don't they? You must be born again. No water and no Spirit. You're not in. He wants you to be in. He wants you to be. The church wants you to be in. Next one. All the people said, amen. All good? All right. So we're going to have a prayer line now.